have just finished covering the first 3 steps of the marketing research process. And I know what you must be thinking. You must be thinking, wow, so many methods, so many ways to go wrong. This is really confusing. Which methods should I be using when? Don't worry about it. In this next slide, you will see that I have classified the different methodologies and some of the methods within in a structure that is very simple, and it hopefully makes sense for you. So here it is. One way to look at what methods to use when is to simply ask 2 very important questions. The first one is, does the researcher know the question that he or she wants to ask? If the answer is yes, you're in the problem-solving domain. If the answer is no, you're likely in the problem identification domain. The other critical question is whether the respondent knows the answer. And even then, even if the answer is yes, you might subsequently want to ask, will she actually reveal the true answer, such as in the case, for example, of the likelihood of recycling that I have just mentioned before. With these 2 very simple questions, you can see you are able to qualify or place the different descriptive, causal, and exploratory research methods in a simple framework that will hopefully help you sort out through the problems. This matrix is not meant to be comprehensive. Within each one of these methods, I have only listed the most often or most commonly used, such as surveys, in-depth interviews, focus groups, observational methods and experiments, or A/B testing these days more referred to in a web context, and access to secondary research, either from internal, company-owned customer base, or external providers such as Nielsen, Ipsos, Kantar, etc. So for the first example, let's go back to our by now famous and well-known Banco Santander Serfin example. What methodology did they use to finally come up with a meaningful segmentation and decide on a product to launch for a specific segments? How do they go about it? First of all, they use secondary data to try to determine what is the actual country's growth potential and to come up with an actual real objective for what we should set ourselves. Remember, it was 730,000 cars in the next year and a half. Next, they conducted focus groups to try to determine what are the main impediments to credit card adoption. In other words, why were there only 5.5 million cars when they had qualified up to 14.5 million customers? And what they found out is that refusal to reveal the income was the main impediment. So they concluded that they need to make the process of signing up for a credit card very quick and speedy. In addition, focus groups revealed what were the attitudes of consumers to different service providers. Next, they used their own customer data to understand patterns of use for the different credit cards and to establish the different demographic profiles. And finally, they did a survey of 2,100 consumers and non-consumers of the bank to determine what are the most important attributes of credit card providers, and to also validate other potential action variables which could serve as a source of segmentation. The key takeaway that you should take from this slide is that one thing is clear. A combination of methods and methodologies is the best way to tackle a meaningful marketing research problem. Now let's look at another example from a complete different setting. Let's take the case, for example, of Procter & Gamble. They had come up with this electric floor mop, and they were thinking about launching this product in Europe and in particularly in Italy. Now, what kind of research will you have done first to try to determine what is the best region of the country to first introduce this product? You may have guessed right. You may have done an observational sort of research method to try to determine what part of the country do women actually scrub and mop their floor more vigorously or spend more time doing this activity. They did that, and as it turns out, they found out that it was in the south of Italy where women spend more hours of the day dedicated to this particular activity. Next, they decided to do some focus groups and a couple of interviews with some of these women, Italian women in the south. But by actually conducting the focus groups, as opposed to validating the south of Italy as the prime target to launch this product, what they found out is that in these women's mind, vigorously mopping the floors and scrubbing actually is associated with love for their families. And the harder to do it in their minds, the more they actually sacrifice and love their families. This single insight led Procter & Gamble to scrap the project of launching the product in Italy.